Well, it is good to see you and see how your communication in action, which I'll ask you about later, but I just wanted to let you know it's nice to see you quasi in person. So, my first question, can you talk about SMA and how it has manifested in your life? For example, I think you mentioned to me that you've been using speech aids since you had a trach. And if you could let me know when you had that trach, at what time in your life.
Thank you, Leslie, for inviting me here today to talk about my SMA and my experiences with assistive technology. Sure. The technical term for what I use to communicate is augmentative and alternative communication. It is called AAC for short. AAC is a subset of assistive technology. AAC is anything that adds to or replaces physiological speech. It includes everything from no-text strategies, like a letter board that a person can use to point to letters with their finger or their eyes to spell out words, or picture boards if reading and spelling are difficult for the person, to making choices from options provided by a communication partner to other more technical supports. It includes higher tech supports such as voice amplification and sophisticated computerized technologies that generate speech and are accessed through a variety of assistive technologies such as touch screens, switches, mouse or mouse emulation, trackballs, and eye gaze. I have been using AAC since I was just about 2 years old. My SMA was not obvious when I was born. My APGAR scores were high. I could kind of hold my head up when I was just a few weeks old. I could breathe on my own and pull my arms and legs up, and I could follow objects with my eyes and respond to sounds and words. But my parents say that I cried a lot, like most of the time when I was supposed to be sleeping. They discussed it with the doctor who was my pediatrician at the time, but he diagnosed colic, gave them some medication to calm me. He told my mother that I was not aware of my feet because she held me too much. And he patted her on the leg and said, "What do you want me to do, Mrs. Regan? He is thriving." She is still bent out of shape about that. Luckily, my mother read the insert on the medication and did not give it to me. It might have sedated me and caused me to not breathe well. So, because that pediatrician dismissed my family's concerns, I was not diagnosed with SMA until I was 9 months old and missed some motor milestones. At the 6-month checkup, a nurse practitioner did the examination. My parents told her that they were concerned because I was not sitting up on my own. They could sit me up, and I would sit for a few seconds, but then I would fall forward or to the side. The nurse laid me on my chest on her arm and said she thought that I was floppy and consulted the pediatrician, the same one who dismissed my parents' concerns. He then agreed to run some tests, which were spread out over months. During the time, I caught a cold and had chest congestion and could not catch my breath. So, my parents begged to be taught chest physiotherapy and to be referred to a specialist. And my mom did some research at our university and reached out to friends with connections in the medical community outside of Alaska. I was diagnosed through a muscle biopsy and consultations with a pediatric neurologist, metabolic muscle specialist, and a pediatric pulmonologist in San Diego. That pulmonologist diagnosed that I was recovering from pneumonia.
Mm.
I tell that story because it is difficult to pinpoint exactly when the SMA manifested or impacted me.
Mm. Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting. Stories about medical, uh, I don't know, mishaps, misunderstandings, misdiagnoses. I know we texted a little about that, so thank you. My question is, how do you stay on top of the new technology, different organizations, all these different entities that are doing research and coming up with new products? Because I'm sure in your life you've experienced a lot of change with the assistive technologies.
All of that, and just looking around on the internet.
So, which healthcare professionals, in your personal experience, have been the most knowledgeable with suggesting new technologies and offering to help you implement them?
My pulmonologist has been a critical part of my healthcare team. He has identified and prescribed all of the technologies I have used over the years to breathe and maintain lung health as much as possible. My speech language pathologist is very knowledgeable about new technologies that have been helpful to me over the years, and she has partnered with me and my family to implement them. My second pediatrician was a staunch advocate for me receiving my power wheelchair when I was not even 2 years old. And she and the rest of my care team also supported me getting my AAC at an early age. When I was in elementary school, a nurse accompanied me to and from school and throughout my day. While she did not recommend new technologies, she embraced the technologies that I used, helped to implement routines to enable me to safely attend school and field trips. And she was comfortable and enthusiastic and knowledgeable about the technology that I used for communication and education. And I am still friends with my third and fourth grade regular education teachers who embrace my use of technology to access the curriculum. I would like to take a minute and just say that it is important for children with disabilities to have the assistive technologies that they need as early as possible. If mobility and or communication are challenges for a child, that child needs to receive supports, including AT and AAC, as soon as possible. They need it to help their development and also to try to avoid having them fall too far behind their peers.
Mm.
It may not be possible to cure a child's disabilities, but no child should be delayed because of lack of equipment. It is hard enough as it is to keep up when you have a disability. Children need time to learn how to use their AT.
So, I know you live in Alaska, And I'm wondering, I've never been to Alaska, and I'm sure, in big cities there's a lot happening, but do you think that there's a tool or technology that's not readily available because of your location? And do you read and hear about people in more urban centers of the US that may have more access to assistive technologies?
It is my understanding that many people everywhere are experiencing delays and complications in getting equipment, both inside and outside of Alaska. But right now, I cannot get access in Alaska to a demo model of the power wheelchair I would like to try out. And it has nothing to do with the pandemic. Reason that I have been given for the lack of demonstration models of the wheelchairs that I would like to test out is that the cost of shipping wheelchairs from the manufacturer is being passed on to the seller, and the cost of shipping is taken out of the dealer's commission. So the dealers are not selling many of that brand of wheelchairs in Alaska. And the manufacturer will not send a demo chair up if the dealer isn't selling the branded chair. I am not sure how much of that is factually correct, but that is what I have been told. It is indicative of the issues we have in Alaska related to shipping.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oftentimes, it costs Alaskans significantly more to order any items online, even if the items are small and lightweight. Many places do not include free shipping to Alaska when they are offering it to other places in the United States. And some companies will not ship here at all. We can get AT, but the population in Alaska is so much smaller than other states that Alaska does not tend to be a targeted market. Our general population is less than 1 million people. So our disabled community is even less than that. So once again, it is incentive on the part of vendors and manufacturers that may be lacking.
I didn't even realize that there were things you couldn't get probably from those big like Amazon and all those online companies, that it was more expensive. That's disheartening. And you had mentioned that there were a few different presentations you've given, and I can't remember which ones you've given and which ones you're planning to give, but you talked about a class of speech therapy students and then an intensive needs transition class. I wanted to hear how you got involved in doing these, and what the satisfaction you derive, and what the students in the presentations, what kind of questions they ask you, what's some big surprises from all that kind of experience.
The presentations that I have done so far have mostly been for college classes of students studying speech therapy. The invitations and requests that I have received have come from people who have gotten to know me as an AAC user. The representative of the speech generating device that I use invited me to do one during the pandemic, but it was on the same day that I was scheduled to receive my first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. So I recorded my presentation. Since then, I have done the presentations live on Zoom. During lockdown, I was interviewed about using AAC for our state's Disability Pride Week, and I have been interviewed at church and by the state of Alaska's Governor's Council on Disabilities. Before COVID, I was scheduled to be the keynote speaker at a large event in Alaska for people who work with a disabled population, but it was canceled when we went into lockdown during the pandemic. In 2021, I was asked to run for vice president of people who use AAC in the United States Society of Augmentative and Alternative Communication, or USAC. And I decided to wait and run next time around because I am so busy with work and a number of commitments. But one of the members of the nominations committee asked me to speak with university students in a course that she teaches. Since then, I have been a speaker at 2 more of her classes at 2 different universities. And I was a presenter at a webinar in October 2022 about being employed as a person who happens to use AAC. I am a senior media tech and the media tech scheduler for St. John United Methodist Church in Anchorage. And I have been the coordinator of activities and events for bridging communities through alternative communication. We call it BICTAC, and it is an adult outreach program of the Bridge School. But the program was paused for this school year while the school focused on its resources, including filling staffing vacancies. A speech-language pathologist who attended the employment webinar asked me if I would talk to a group of school-aged students who experience a broad range of disabilities. They are working on job searching and interviewing for jobs. Some of them are learning to use their AAC. The principal and assistant principal of the program and teachers and speech-language pathologists were also at the presentation. I talked with them about how to look for jobs, and then I practiced social interviewing with a few AAC users and did a short Q&A. None of the questions from the university students or the community or the school-aged students and their academic supporters were surprising. Rather, each time that I have made a presentation, I have been impressed with the thoughtfulness of the questions. For example, one of the speech-language pathology students asked me if there was anything that someone meeting a person who uses AAC should not do. I told her firmly anything is okay, but I did not prefer baby talk.
Wow. Well,
The school-aged students did not ask me anything about using AAC. They asked me about myself, how I was doing, what were my favorite sports, and which of my jobs is my favorite. I was very impressed by their enthusiasm and courage in wanting to ask and answer questions with their AAC. It was uplifting to meet the students and their support staff and to work with some of the students who were learning to use their AAC. If possible, attend a conference related to your specific underlying condition. Often there is a vendor hall where you can see and try assistive technologies. Identify your strengths and challenges and think about matching your challenges and strengths to the features of the technology. Join groups who experience the disabilities that you experience, for example, speech disabilities. Read blogs and do internet research. Discuss your needs with your primary care physician and any specialists that work with you. Technology has become so much more mainstream. So, in that regard, finding technology may be easier.
I hope so. Have you ever attended an abilities expo? Have you heard of them? So it's okay.
Attended one virtually during the pandemic.
They're really great for people to check out different kinds of technology and different wheelchairs. I know they don't go north of like LA or San Francisco, but they only go to about 7 or 8 cities in the country. But it is a pretty exciting event. I've learned so much at them.
Closing the Gap in Minnesota is also a great conference.
Oh, okay. I never heard of that. I'll check it out. I'm so glad I get to see you doing this because, I wouldn't, it's like seeing your eyes and your hand move on that sort of joy knob. I, it's like a whole different language you've learned to communicate, and it's fascinating. Is it the same method you use for the text when we message each other?
Yes, it is. I had a lot more pre-programmed. Yes, it is. I
So
thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about assistive technology and using AAC.
you're welcome. So I will see you in 2 days, I hope, in Pilates.
Yes, I love that class.
Me too. Well,
And Tai GWS.
Tai Chi, yeah.
And Tai Chi was great. And Tai Chi was great today.